I fell out of love with motorcycling. I guess that's a little dramatic of a statement, but there was about a 2-year period where life partially got in the way. But also, I simply wasn't drawn to the idea of strapping on all my gear, my tent, my sleeping bag, my tools, and hopping into the saddle and driving thousands of miles. I didn't stop riding. I'd go out for the occasional ride, use my motorcycle to get from point A to point B. But it didn't feel the same as it had in the 7-year period prior. I used to crave it. I'd plan my entire work vacation balance each year around where I'd travel and rent a motorcycle to ride. Except one day, presumably after taking the winter season off, I didn't have that same spark anymore. That storm in my chest that previously got me up off my couch, out of my apartment, and onto my bike and shifting into first gear was gone. I never fell out of love with motorcycles, though. I worked on and maintained my bike more than ever during 2024. I loved it as a machine. I learned more about its electrical systems and rewired most of the wiring harness and soldered a series of split wires that had worn down from water ingress over time. I adjusted the valve clearances, replaced my sprockets, put on a new chain, and upgraded the brakes. And I always kept it clean, even as it sat there in my parking spot. I had commuted to work by motorcycle from Brooklyn to Manhattan for 4 years during the warmer months, but I changed jobs and there was no parking near my new office, so I started commuting by subway instead. But every time I walked by my bike on the way to the subway, sitting there behind the bars of the parking lot that I kept it in Brooklyn, I'd give it a nod as I walked by. Was it reverence? Appreciation of the countless adventures that we'd been on, the 30,000 miles I'd put on it? I'm not sure. But a part of me felt sorry, as if I was letting it down, like a horse that wanted to run but had to stay in the stable all day. I moved back to Colorado at the beginning of 2025, and I left my Triumph Bonneville on the East Coast, where I spent a few weeks per year, and where it's just a little bit better suited in terms of engine size and ground clearance. I spent that spring and summer hiking, traveling to mountain peaks and glacial lakes on my 2 feet rather than 2 wheels. And then one day during the fall, I was driving my truck up to a trailhead, and the road got a bit rough, and I thought to myself, sitting there in my air conditioning, I think this might be more fun on a motorcycle. So the next week, I went out and rented one, a Kawasaki KLX 300, and I drove it out to Rampart Range in Colorado and sped around on the maintained dirt roads, and jumped off the road a bit to explore an area within the pines. I felt that spark in my chest again. When I returned the bike after the rental was over, I wanted to go out and do it again the next weekend. I suddenly had the urge to ride all over the West, in the Rockies, explore more parts of the mountain time zone on 2 wheels. So let this be a lesson to my future self. Life flows like the seasons. You might want to listen to a podcast today, but tomorrow you might wake up and have the urge to throw on that old record, or maybe a new song that you've never heard before. Wherever the current is flowing, follow the river, I suppose. And ironically, following that proverbial river, here I find myself in the desert, the Moab Desert in southern Utah, a landscape dominated by red rock ascending out of the ground. But technically it's not the rock that rose out of the ground, but rather it's these canyons that formed by the river itself, carving out the Navajo and Wingate sandstone over millions of years. So I guess it's not that ironic after all. The landscape is simply flowing with the current of the river as well. And in this season of my motorcycle journey, I'm on a dual sport motorcycle, my Kawasaki KLX that I purchased a few weeks ago. Riding on dirt feels novel, quite different from my previous motorcycle trips on the pavement with my Triumph Bonneville. You can certainly get lost in the middle of nowhere even on a road bike, but the stakes feel slightly higher here. The roads are not graded to the same standard, and there are no guardrails protecting you from the sheer drops that await you mere inches off the side of the road. Not to mention I've had to get used to my back tire sliding around behind me as it tries to find traction and propel me forward. I have a bag of things strapped to my motorcycle in case this bike strands me. A tire kit, a spare tube, wrenches of various sizes, spare fuses, electrical tape, a few liters of water, and a couple Cliff Bars. But in the back of my head, I know this all isn't enough to handle a worst-case scenario. I don't have a sleeping bag or emergency shelter. I have no gear to fix a broken clutch or brake line, a severely bent rim, or handle any major mechanical failure. For a moment, I miss riding my Bonneville on the familiar back roads of New England. But then I look up at the buttes and plateaus around me, the sand blowing off the tops of the rock formations, the arches carved out into the sandstone. And after a few hours in trails spent building the muscle memory of proper body positioning and standing while riding, it all starts to flow. I get a bit more confident, and I feel more connected to the bike, with its tank between my knees. I start to feel like I'm skiing a bit, carving through the sand like there's a light coating of fresh powder on top of the road. I feel a smile form on my face under the helmet. I look down at my speedometer, 25 miles per hour. I could have sworn I was going 40. No one told me how fun 25 miles an hour could be. I'm not sure how long this season of dirt riding will last, but right now I have this spark in my chest. I want to continue getting better riding off-road. Feels like I'm learning a new skill. I'd like to get better to the point where I feel as at home off-road as I do on-road on a motorcycle. And riding a dual sport seems like a key to the West, a machine that can get you into environments that are simply less accessible to cars. So as this season of dual sport riding begins, I embrace the road ahead, the skills that I'll build, the inspiration that I'll glean, and the lessons that I'll learn, wherever this river happens to take me.